What are your earliest childhood memories growing up in Colorado? Your mom and dad unfortunately died when you were a kid, right? How old were you when they?
Well, the recollection that I have was that, well, of course, I was at near my mother's uh, hospital bed when she passed away, and I was 8 years old. And then after that, 3 years later, my father died from stomach cancer. So those are my two early reflections of my parents.
After your parents passed away, your older sister and her husband stepped in to take care of you and.
Well, my older sister, Chris, the welfare people tried to take me and my brothers and sisters from her, and she fought it all the way, and she got custody of everybody. It was a couple years later that my brother-in-law Bill, then they got married. So my sister and my brother-in-law got together and eventually married, which goes beyond, into my teenage years. But after my sister got custody of the kids, she met Bill at a dance studio. She worked at Arthur Murray and he worked at Paramount Studios, and they were both dance instructors. Well, somehow or somewhere along the line they met, and believe it or not, Bill fell in love right away with her, and she didn't want him to take custody because there were so many siblings, and even though he had confessed her love for her, she said, "No, I can't. I'm not going to do that to you. A young man like you and me picking up the responsibility of the children." And she said no. So he went away for a little while.
This is when they were 18, 19?
I don't know what circumstance got. No, I take it back. I reflect back. They both met at dance studios. He eventually fell in love with her, and then she had said no because she didn't. Like I said, she didn't want him to have the responsibility of the children. So to make a long story short, she had chased him away twice, as a matter of fact. And then when he finally came back and told her, he says, "Listen, I'm in love with you, and I'm not going to go anywhere, and I don't care that you have all those siblings living with you. I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you." And eventually they spent 55 years together, but that's how they met. That's how I came under his care. And the rest of the kids who had kind of like flown the coop not long after that, as they got older, they would leave, so forth and so on. So I was the oldest one at the time. At one time, I was the oldest one because Alice and Loretta and all the other ones had flown the coop, like I just said, and went about trucking.
How do you think Chris and Bill shaped your upbringing after your parents passed? And what did
Well,
that
what I
mean?
didn't know at the time, of course, she was my oldest sister, and I always believed everything that she had told me, and she led everybody in the right direction as best she could. And then when she married him and he came along, this was a smart guy. He had an IQ of 181 and pretty smart man. So and eventually he went to work for, after he joined the Air Force, he went to worked for NASA, the space program, and he helped to design the first rocket ship used on the Mercury program. But I didn't know that at that time, but he was a pretty smart man. He was a good example of what a gentleman should be, and I think that's the best thing that I got from him. He was always the gentleman, even to this date. I've heard it many, many times, but people always accuse me of being a gentleman one way or another, and I got it from him, plain and simple. He was a fine example, 6'4", big tall guy, and was the perfect gentleman to me that I learned to emulate, and it was a good. It was probably the smartest thing that I ever did when we were together.
Okay. Sounds like you looked up to him a lot. So what was it like growing up with so many siblings? You had four brothers, four sisters?
I didn't pay any attention to it, and I didn't really think about it. Now I might think about it, but back then, we were just all brothers and sisters, and we lived in a small place, and we all managed to survive together, with Bill and Chris leading us along the way. But then we got to a certain point when we were living there that they realized that they had to move everybody out of there because there were just too many people. So what Bill did was he bought a piece of property out in Littleton, Colorado, and it was 5 acres, and it was our escape from the inner city. I knew I'd be going into a better school. I knew that I had room to more or less breathe. The neighbors had horses, so we always had view of horses, and we always thought about that. But as far as the difficulty goes, after I guess I was probably 14, and everybody had gone that was older than me. So it was just with Lonnie and Rodney and Richard and Deborah, excuse me. And at the time, when we were just brothers and sisters, I didn't think about how difficult it was, or the consequences, if there were any, about having so many. It didn't mean anything to me. They were just my brothers and sisters.
So how many siblings do you have?
I had 10 brothers and sisters.
Can you name them off?
Sure. My oldest sibling was Garvey, who after he left earlier in his life, he went into the Navy. Then I had, of course, Aunt Chris, and then I had Aunt Yvonne, who married and moved to Loveland, Colorado. And then I had Jerry, and she lived in Denver with her 3 kids, with at the time, my brother-in-law, I'm drawing a blank, excuse me, but Bob was his name, Robert. And then Alice flew the coop, married Uncle Joe, and Loretta flew, and ironically she married Gorgeous George, who at the time was a real popular televised wrestler.
Motivated you to join the Navy?
I don't think there was any direct motivation, or like I wasn't in trouble or anything like that. I just I wanted to be in the military, and because Bill had been in the Air Force, they questioned why I didn't go into the Air Force, because I joined the Navy because I wanted to see the world. Well, in a manner of speaking, I did. I went to San Diego to basic training. I was stationed there for 1 year. Then I went to Naval Air Station in Atsugi, Japan. And then I went aboard ship for 2 years. But I liked the Navy, and it was something about it that made me want to become a sailor, which I did. I have no regrets about that, none whatsoever.
So you were stationed on the USS Oriskany, right?
Yes, my third year, I transferred aboard the Naval an aircraft carrier, the Oriskany, which was a 34,000 ton aircraft carrier. If you compare it today, because the new ones are 90,000 or bigger, so I was on a small aircraft carrier.
Do you have any memorable stories from your time aboard the USS Oriskany? I mean, you were in the Vietnam War.
Well, we were in and out of Vietnam, but I was in and out of Vietnam. I mean, Japan. That's where I fell in love with Japan, and Thailand. These are ports of call that we got to go to as a U.S. military instrument, and what I experienced in all these, all the time, starting that time at Japan, I got to see a very large part of the world. I'm talking about New Zealand, I'm talking about Australia, I'm talking about Thailand, Japan, of course, and then Taiwan. And I got to experience quite a few things, quite a few places.
Okay. Do you have any like special stories from like aboard ship?
The only story I have from the only bad memory I have is when 2 days after I went aboard ship, we had an explosion in the magnesium flare locker fire. After all said and done, we had lost 38 pilots and 4 enlisted men. That memory stands out because it took so many lives, and it was all caused by an accident. So, I mean, you know, I did a lot. I loaded bombs and that kind of stuff when they were bringing them on board, so forth and so on. But that's a small memory in the back of my mind. But the front memory was the explosion, and like I said, all this occurred 2 days after I went aboard ship, and that was my initiation towards sea life. But I didn't. It was pretty devastating to me, and that was my introduction to sea life, and I had to make some adjustments because I didn't know I would be that afraid because so many people had died, and it was a terrible time.
Sure. What brought you to Nevada in 1974? You left Vietnam, and then
No, after I got out of the military, I went back to Colorado just for a short while, and decided I liked the Bay Area better. So I moved back, and I went to San Francisco, and I lived in San Francisco for until 1974. Well, in 1974, I had a conversation with my older sister, Alice, and Loretta, for that matter, and and Deborah. That's where this came in. I had talked to her on the phone, and she invited me to come visit them for a while. So I went to Bullhead City, Arizona, and that was where I decided that I wanted to stay in Nevada.
Part of working as a casino dealer in Reno.
Well, I suppose the most interesting thing was that I got to meet people from all over the world, literally. And I met a lot of great people from around the world, in Japan, Germany, England, a lot of places. And even they became my friends. And I communicated with them like through the mail and that kind of stuff. And so that was the best part of the gaming industry. I mean, of course, I moved up the ladder and became a boss, and kept going from there. So
The casinos where you met both your wives. How did you meet Lynn?
with Lynn, we worked together. We ended up working in the same casino and the same shift, and then we got together and fell in love for a brief time, and that's where my son Damon comes along.
What was life like when Damon was born?
Well, it was my first son. Everybody's always proud of their first child, and he was my first son, and he was a great kid. He was a great kid, he really was. He had to endure a lot because of the separation between his mother and myself. But
You and Mama together, and how did life change after starting a family with her?
after I had separated from Lynn, I was working at John Squagg's Nugget and Sparks, and I met your mother. I met Tricia. I was dealing, and I was a part-time floor, and she worked in the cashier's cage because she wanted to take a break from the casino. She had also got pneumonia, and she wanted to just take it easy. At the time, there was a lot of pressure going from a casino to from banking to casino. But that's how I met her, and it's funny the way I met her. So I thought it'd be a kick in the ass. Excuse my language.
PG answers. How did your life change after you started a family with her?
Tricia was this is the way we met. Then I'll tell you. Then it makes sense after that. At the Nugget in Sparks, I was dealing craps, and I was on the pole. I was on the stick or on the pole, however you want to call it. And somebody came up to me behind me and pinched me on the rear end. And I turned around and looked, and it was Trish. And 6 months after that, we got married. So that was the beginning of it.
Okay. Drew you to Star Trek and Star Wars, and do you have any favorite character or episode?
Well, I'll tell you the honest truth is that when I was in 1967, I think is when the first Star Trek came out, and I'm not sure exactly of the date, but and that was a very, very popular thing. And then when I went aboard, when I went on land, and we had a home base on land, we used to get together and have parties about Star Trek, and then the rest of it just kind of fell into place for me, plain and simple.
Do you have any favorite characters?
Well, of course, all of them. No, I liked Captain Kirk. I liked even Spock even more. I liked Scotty. I liked Bones, Zulu. I liked them all. I just fell in love with the series.
Okay. Can you share your favorite Western movie and like why it stands out to you?
My favorite Western movie is pretty self-explanatory. It was made in Spain by Sergio Leone, who is an Italian director. And my favorite Western is Once Upon a Time in the West. It's a longer than normal movie, but that's my favorite. And then Silverado comes up with a very close second. But those are two of them. The third one I think it was really good that people don't pay much attention to is The Searchers with John Wayne. So those are my three favorite movies that I really, really enjoyed.
Why do they stand out to you? Westerns.
Westerns didn't, it wasn't so much Westerns, it was the fact that they were good movies. And Sergio Leone had a way of directing movies and creating the dialogue, and he had a guy named Ennio Morricone who created all the music for the Star Trek, for the Once Upon a Time in the West, and it was very haunting and very, he used to make up movies, they used to make up music for certain characters that when you heard that music, you know that character was coming on. So, but the Western itself, Once Upon a Time in the West, I just think was well made. He's the same guy that did Once Upon a Time in America, so and it's very similar. They're very similar to each other.
What 70s music do you enjoy the most and why?
I like the Beatles, plain and simple. They came along and they revolutionized and they changed music forever. Their creativity, they were the team of Lennon and McCartney were two of the best songwriters ever. And my second group is the Eagles. Of course, I've always liked the Eagles ever since the late 70s. So that's what it is. I like for music. I enjoy that the most.
Do you have any concerts that were memorable that you ever went to?
Yeah, I do. I didn't go to Monterey Pop Festival, but there's a place in San Francisco called Fillmore West was in San Francisco. And San Francisco and Fillmore West have a big combination for me because I've seen Santana, I've seen Big Brother and the Holding Company featuring Janis Joplin, and there were numerous groups. I couldn't tell you who they were because there were so many of them, but basically I got introduced to them.
So what sparked your interest in classic cars? You are like an encyclopedia when it comes to old classic
The
vehicles.
reason I liked all the classic cars is that they were really made well. You know, like the stuff that's out there now, it's very thin plastic. I mean, granted, they have a lot of airbags to protect you, but they're just not made. And the classic cars are just, that was from an era gone by. I like Model Ts, I like 50 cars, I like 60 cars, some of the 70s stuff. And the thing about those cars is that they were all metal. There was no plastic anywhere. And I learned to just love those cars. My brother-in-law, Joe, had a 59 Mercury, Victoria. Even Bill had a 51 Buick, which in itself was like a tank because it was so big and so heavy. So I just started. I guess probably when Bill had the 51 Buick is when I started liking classic cars. and I have since then. So I studied them. I can almost look at a car and tell you what year it was made.
What's your favorite vehicle that you can think of?
My favorite people.
Vehicle. Your favorite car. Do you have a favorite car?
My favorite car. I like the '63 Corvette. I like the 32 Model A. All the Model A's were made by Henry Ford back when he first started manufacturing cars. At one time he had created more cars than anybody else, and all the streets are practically Fords. So that fill in the blank, because I love classic cars.
So do you have a favorite memory from playing golf, handball, tennis, any of that kind of stuff?
I have memories from tennis, and the reason I have memories from that is because I wasn't that good to join the pro circuit. So I used to play in the neighborhoods, and ironically enough, I used to hustle games. And I made a lot of money hustling games. I bet them 20, give them lose the first one, then turn around and beat for 2 or 3 more. And I love tennis. And I got into golf in 1972 with my buddy that I worked with, Ed Fiorina. And I went out with him on one time to play golf in San Francisco, and I started liking golf. I go, wow, this is pretty cool. So I never got really proficient in it, but I got good enough to play, and I still enjoy. I hope I can still play with everything that's happened to me. I still hope that someday I can play golf.
What advice would you give to your grandkids or your great-grandkids?
Happiness is not something that you go out and buy. It's something that you grow into, something that you receive, and it's life is what you make it. Plain and simple. There's nothing complicated about it unless you make it that way. Life is very simple, and nice simple rules are always to be happy, always be truthful with yourself, and it's pretty simple to do. All you gotta do is do what you were taught, and I had good examples, and my sister and brother-in-law were the 2 biggest influences in my life, and I follow with what they do. So always to be yourself, always be truthful, and take life one step at a time, because that's all you can do. When you get stepping too much and you fall all over your feet, that makes your life just complicated. So take your time and enjoy life, because there's too many things out there for you not to. So enjoy your life, and I think you're going to end up being one happy individual.